The woman who wouldn't be a model. Remembering Helen Schucman. She said, "Don't take me as an example." And yet here we are, not because she wanted to be followed, but because she quietly refused to lead. Not because she practiced the course as a student, but because she became what the course pointed to without trying. Helen Schucman, the scribe of A Course in Miracles, didn't study the course. She didn't underline it or annotate it with spiritual affirmations. She didn't quote it. She knew it. She recognized it. And that's the key. Recognition, not recollection. Because truth doesn't come from scholarship. It comes from remembrance. She once described the voice not as sound, not even as something she heard, but as something she knew. No auditory waves, no dissociation, no automatic writing. She wrote it freely, voluntarily, sometimes in cabs and between therapy sessions. She could pause it, pick it back up. But when she didn't write for 3 weeks, she said life became rough. Not because of guilt, but because the nudge of the Holy Spirit became undeniable. Because the absence of that voice wasn't a punishment. It was a silence that made the noise of the world unbearable. She called the process strictly mental, a recognition that transcended the senses. The words didn't come from memory or intellect. She didn't know how the sentences would end. It was a flow that she could not predict but could trust, a thought system she knew nothing about, which is precisely why it could be given to her. It wasn't hers, and yet it came through her. And when she tried to edit it, it broke. She admitted it. She edited the words to improve them, but it disrupted the internal consistency. The language of truth doesn't need polish. It needs purity. She learned to stop editing. She let the original words stand, because only the voice knew how to keep the consistency intact. This internal consistency wasn't just linguistic, it was metaphysical. The Course holds no contradictions, no mixed messages, no dual gods, no schizophrenic theology of love and wrath. And this, she admitted, baffled her. She, a master of language, had spent years trying to write things that read as clearly, but this came through clean, smooth, painfully precise, not of her, but through her. She often said it was like seeing the words on a blackboard in her mind. When she forgot something, she could ask to see it, and it would appear, clear, exact, complete. The Course was never lost, not even once. People returned the manuscript she misplaced. Subways, taxis, strangers on the street, it always came back. It followed her around, because it wasn't hers to lose. Helen never claimed to be a holy person. She joked she was still cross-eyed, trying to understand what had happened. She said she was naturally dissociated, which she didn't take as a compliment. And yet, when she entered a room, people felt her. Like truth itself, her presence didn't shout. It simply couldn't be ignored. Ken Wapnick said it plainly. Helen didn't need the Course. She was one of those advanced teachers described in the manual, whose gift wasn't in their knowledge but in their presence. She didn't practice overtly, but she lived in the contradiction of her own undoing. She turned away from her former self, and in doing so, she left us the gift, not a theology, not a legacy, but a reminder. She gave us the voice, and she did so without making herself a voice. She did not model behavior. She modeled non-interference. She modeled how not to get in the way. She modeled how to listen, not with ears but with the mind. And more than anything else, she modeled the cost of choosing peace over personal identity. Because this work undid her. It cost her everything she thought she believed. And she did it anyway. Helen didn't believe in the Course. She transmitted it. And it made her uncomfortable. She was a Jewish psychologist who didn't care for religion or New Age nonsense. And yet, the words came and kept coming. And the system organized itself. It came with a text, then a workbook, then a teacher's manual, a system, not a book of beliefs but a thought system, a means of organizing perception in order to undo the very idea of perception. And she knew that anyone could ask and receive answers, that guidance wasn't for the elite, it was available to all. She said, "I think you can ask anything." That's the Holy Spirit, the voice she described as not hers, and yet unmistakably in her, the voice that didn't punish, didn't control, didn't speak aloud, but nudged with consistency, nudged with clarity, nudged her out of sleep and into listening. Helen Schucman never asked to be remembered. She didn't even want to be known. But like the light she channeled, her invisibility was the proof. She left no grand testimony of personal transformation. What she left was the blackboard, still shining in the mind, still legible to those who ask, still offering answers to anyone who wants to hear. And that's why we love her, not because she was perfect, but because she refused to pretend. Helen never wrote poetry to impress. She wrote because the words insisted. And when they came, they weren't ornamental, they were precise, surgical even. The poem Requiem, which she composed for a Maryknoll sister grieving her mother, may have been penned in consolation, but it was also prophecy. Helen was writing for someone else, but the voice was speaking of her. "Because I love him, I can scarcely weep." That line, tucked within the poem's soft rhythms, carries a metaphysical bombshell. Real love does not grieve. Real love knows there is no loss. What dies in time was never real. And yet the poem doesn't lecture, it consoles, because Helen knew how to give the course away, without quoting it. She let it shape her lines the same way it shaped her resistance, subtly, completely, from the inside out. But the poems were not the work. The voice had asked for more, a transmission, a scribing, a system. And Helen, for all her literary mastery and intellectual skepticism, did not want the job. She didn't trust where it came from. She didn't like what it said. And yet she never once seriously considered stopping. Her refusal wasn't disobedience, it was awe. And the awe showed up as resistance. Why? Because the course wasn't about her. And the ego doesn't like that. It resists what can't be controlled, edited, or owned. The reluctance wasn't spiritual immaturity. It was spiritual honesty. And that's what makes her so rare. Helen didn't resist because she was confused. She resisted because she knew. She knew this was not her voice. She knew these words were not hers. She knew this material would undo everything she believed, including her own specialness. She said, "I tried to edit it and learned that even small changes broke the internal consistency." She saw the truth get tampered with and felt it. Tangibly, unmistakably. The voice wouldn't let her fake it. Not on the page. Not in her mind. And when she forgot the original wording, she'd asked to see it. And there it would be. On the blackboard in her mind. That's how the Holy Spirit works. Not with volume, but vision. Not with thunder, but precision. And always with peace, unless she ignored it. Then came the sleepless nights, the agitation, the internal nudge. She called it rough. Not punitive, just dissonant. Life without guidance is not life. It's noise. And the mind that's tasted the quiet of inner knowing can't go back to static without noticing. And this is where Bill Thetford, her reluctant companion, her assigned partner, enters not just the story, but the symbol, what? The course didn't come to Helen. It came through a relationship. It emerged not as doctrine, but as a response to pain between two people. That's why Ken said, the course came to heal Helen and Bill's relationship. It had no other function, and on the level of form it failed. But metaphysically, it succeeded. Because even though Helen and Bill never reconciled in the worldly sense, never had the tidy healing most people hope for, something far deeper occurred. The voice came because of their dysfunction. And it stayed. The miracle wasn't that they loved each other. The miracle was that they stayed available to the possibility of healing. That's all the Holy Spirit ever needs. Bill loved the workbook. He studied the lessons. He practiced. He read. He showed the behavior most people associate with devotion. Helen, by contrast, resisted all of it. But her intimacy with the voice was beyond study. She could quote the course without opening the book. She knew the material, not because she learned it, but because she remembered it. This distinction is crucial. Helen didn't practice the course. She was used by it. She didn't quote it because she didn't need to. Truth was not a lesson plan for her. It was a frequency. She gave people course-based advice, told them to forgive, told them to let go, and then whispered under her breath, "But I won't." And somehow, that made her more trustworthy. Because she never lied. She never pretended to practice what she didn't. She never posed as a saint. She was a channel, not a guru. A vessel, not a personality. And while her relationship with Bill may not have been healed in the conventional sense, it served the only function that mattered. It opened the door. And what walked through was a message outside of time. There is something deeply symbolic in Helen's refusal to become an icon. She knew people would try to make her into one. That's why she repeatedly said, "Don't take me as a model." She knew the ego's seduction of specialness. She wanted no part of it. And yet, she still delivered the greatest spiritual transmission of the 20th century. Not because she agreed with it, but because she got out of its way. Her life was the answer to a question most students haven't dared to ask. What if the course is not something I learn, but something I allow? What if I don't have to accept it, to be used by it? Helen's reluctance wasn't rebellion, it was reverence. She didn't reject the course. She surrendered her right to understand it on her terms. And in that surrender, the words came. The system organized itself. The voice clarified every page. And through her unwilling willingness, the mind of Christ was given back to the world. This is why we still feel her. This is why the course has coherence, because she never made it about herself. She gave us a way out of conflict. And she did it while still feeling conflicted. That's grace. That's trust. That's Helen.